For me, it was like a life change. I was not healthy. I was drinking a lot. I was going through a lot of personal problems in my life, and I didn't know how to deal with them. All I know is that I needed to have some sort of big change. I just wasn't happy with the way I looked, the way I felt, the way I was being present and in the moment for my family. I wasn't happy the way I was showing up at work, the quality of my projects, all that different stuff. Also, my mom passed away. And so I'd still had the residue of that in my head and all those different things. And then there was also COVID. And out of COVID, there was this huge spike in projects and just trying to keep everyone on the same page with the company, trying to keep, the projects moving forward. And it all really started with my 40th birthday, which is very stereotypical. And most people will, go buy a car or do something. When my mom passed, she had an estate that was small, but it was like knickknacks. And so we had quite a few things to go through. In that moment, I was like, all right, something's gotta give. And then my wife took me on a trip for my 40th birthday. We went to Mexico, and it was supposed to be super relaxing. It was wonderful. And then on the third day, I started checking my phone. I started checking my emails. And that's when the sense of anxiety came over me, and I was like, I couldn't stop responding to emails, checking them, et cetera, et cetera. And I just started getting this weight that just came back over me, and I realized that, something has to give. So all these different things were happening at the same time, and I knew that there needed to be a change. I didn't know what it was. But I ended up talking with my brother, and he had been in Alaska. He'd been up on Denali doing some training courses, and he said, Sean, I don't know what it is, but if you want to go do a trip with me, go mountaineering, he's like, you should do it. Here's the thing that you have to know, is that you're going to have to completely change your life. You're going to have to change the way you look at yourself. You're going to have to get a lot of discipline. You're gonna need to get a coach, you're gonna need to change your diet, and you need to fully commit. Me being competitive, I went into it head first. And I said, I know something needs to happen, so let's do it. And I got a coach who I still have today. He lives in Chamonix, which is in France. And the first call I had with him, he was on top of the base camp for Mont Blanc. And he was just talking to me and saying, yeah, I'm excited, to meet you, et cetera. And he's like, let me show you outside. So it was a FaceTime. He walks outside of the station he's at and turns around and shows me the top of Mont Blanc. And I knew at that point I was just hooked. He's like, you have to come over here and do this with me someday. The first big climb I went on was Mount Rainier. And I had thought that I worked hard and I was strong and I was physically and mentally strong, but I didn't realize how demanding it would be. Most people will go up, a more traveled route on Mount Rainier, and it's relatively straightforward. There's no straightforward path there, but this one is where the majority of people go. However, I was going with my brother, and so we went on an 8-day course, whereas most courses are most climbs are 3 days, but this was an actual course where people went and trained for Denali. So Denali is a month long, and it is a very difficult climb. The mountains in Alaska, and it's over 20,000 feet. So this course that I was on was meant to simulate that. So over the course of 8 days, you have a 95-pound pack. And I thought I was gonna have my brother with me, but my brother had long COVID. So I said, I'm gonna go anyway. So I showed up in Seattle to Alpine Ascents, which is the expedition company. I showed up to their gear check. We go around the room and introduce each other, and these are like people going for the 7 summits. They're marathon runners. They're these very, very capable individuals. And my response to this, the prompt in the conversation of what's your background is I said, well, I'm here to have fun and learn. And everybody looked at me like, whoa, what is this guy doing here? And the lead guide said, well, this course is called the Crusher. So welcome to the Crusher. We start out at the bottom of this ravine area, which as you go up turns into a glacier. And there's there's multiple glaciers on the mountain. It was by far the toughest thing I had ever done in my life. And I was overly ambitious. You're on one of the glaciers doing training exercises, doing camps. A storm came in and we had to build out ice walls around our tent. The tent almost blew away, and that was at about 7,000 feet, and then you end up climbing to 10,000, and you spend the night up there, and then you go for a summit attempt. I felt great going into that summit attempt. Ended up making it to about, 12,000 feet, and the winds were blowing at 40 miles per hour, and it was just really rough. I remember kind of standing up a little bit to look up, and this huge gust of wind came and hit me. And I almost fell backwards, and I was like, all right, I don't know how much longer I can make it. The sun was coming up behind us on the mountain, so you could see your shadow on it. You could see the ice whipping around, like the ice coming off the surface of the mountain. And I thought of my kids, and I said, I'm done. So I yell out to the lead guy, and I said, hey, stop real quick. And he turns around, and he looks at me with this disgusted face. I turn around to kind of look back down the mountain because I didn't want anyone to see my reaction. And I just kind of broke down on my knees, and I started crying. And I saw a picture of my wife and my boys, and I had goggles on, and the tears started filling in my goggles. I just said, this is it. And so they took me off the rope team, and one of the junior guides walked me down. Fast forward a couple weeks, I'm back in Dallas, pretty dejected, and I'm trying to figure out what to make of it all. And I got a call from my buddy, his name's Greg Warden. He's here in Dallas as well. And I was just trying to think through everything. I was like, what happened to me? And he said, well, have you heard of the hero's journey? He's like, you went through it, and right now you're down and out, but this is your chance for a rebirth. This is where you get to redefine who you are and how you see the world. And I realized that was not failing on that and going up against such great odds, and me being a kind of an idiot in some sense, pretty naive, which I've done a lot in my life. Failing was the best thing that could ever happen to me. And I think that applies to life. People measure themselves by, did I climb this mountain? Did I do this thing? If I didn't, I'm a failure. No, it's a chance for growth. It's a chance for rebirth. And we go through our own hero's journeys as people every single day. If we're not facing challenges and failing and going through this period of growth where we become a new person, then, we're staying stagnant. The amount of self-discipline it takes rubs off into everything you do. You start to think about architecture and continuously getting better, and the fact that it takes a long time. There's no quick answer. Anything you do, if you want to be the best at it, if you want to be excellent, you need to have focus, and you need to be patient, and you need to continuously refine yourself mentally. You have to continuously seek improvement and realize that results just don't happen overnight. That applies to everything in life. That applies to being present for your children, applies to being present for your wife and being the best version of yourself. So it is, I started now 4 years ago, and 4 years doesn't seem like a long time, but when you're doing something daily and practicing, getting better at it, it is quite a bit of time. And ultimately, it's turned me into a better husband, a better father, and I think a better leader. There was a block of time where my children, I started realizing that they're not kids anymore. I've got 2 boys, and at about 4 or 5 years old, you start realizing as a father how important it is for them to have good, strong male role models, right? Who they can look up to and see that, okay, this person has discipline, I'm learning values, and not just kind of like be wild and crazy kids. They can tell when you're there and when you're not. And I remember just never feeling like I was fully in the moment, never feeling like I was giving my full attention to my boys. That was a big byproduct of this whole thing, is that I was able to truly feel present in the moment and give my full love and attention to those boys. And this is also full attention to my wife, my amazing wife, who needed the same. That translates to everyone at O'Brien. If somebody has something come up and it has to do with their family or something important that they need to take care of, I say family first, always. Like, they need to take care of that and focus on what is most important. You know, you only live once. The more focus we can have on leaving legacy with our own family, the better we're gonna make the world. It's pretty simple. That for me is probably one of the most important reasons why having that discipline, having the right priorities, the right focus is critical. And, you know, I learned a lot of that through my climbing journey.